Thank you, Madam President, for recognizing me to join in this debate on the appropriation of the financial year 2018. I'd also like to thank my Senate colleagues for your welcoming words and well wishes. It was greatly appreciated. I'd also like to use this time to thank the political leader of the United National Congress, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bisasa, for giving me the opportunity, via this appointment to the Senate, to add to my voice, and indeed the voice of many millennials who wish to contribute to the conversation of national development. I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Prasad-Bisasa on her budget response, because in it she sought to give the nation hope and a roadmap for the future. She presented a plan for future success and has invited the people of this country from all walks of life to come forward and participate in national development. And that is the kind of open and inclusive leadership that the country needs, bringing more voices to the table, more ideas, more innovation, so that we can build the kind of nation that we hope to see. I would like to congratulate my colleagues in the House, who I know work tirelessly meeting with their constituents, meeting with interest groups, and trying to bring to the House of Representatives well-researched and cohesive responses to the budget. And that approach was continued here today with Senator Mark's contribution today in this Senate. The magnitude of our remit as the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago is not lost on me. It is an honor for me to be able to be here to contribute in the budget debate, because I understand that when I stand to speak, I speak for a generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians who have so much to offer and who have seen so little in terms of access to opportunities to contribute to society in a meaningful way. And that would be the overall theme of my presentation, looking at what this government has done in terms of access to opportunities for the people of this country. And I speak for the women and men of this country who want to give Trinidad and Tobago all that they have to offer, but who feel disconnected from the system, disconnected from the process, and disconnected from leadership. And to the thousands of people who have reached out to me on social media, in person, and who have tried to share their ideas and concerns, I just want to say thank you to them for believing once again that you can be included in this process by reaching out to people who sit in a parliament that is meant to represent you. The theme the Minister of Finance chose for this year's budget, changing the paradigm, I thought was very interesting. When you wish to change the paradigm as a sitting government, I just assume you're willing to change yourself, but And in that section of his budget, he listed a series of ills and things that needed to be cured in order for our society to move forward and to grow. And then I listened to the rest of the minister's presentation. And despite articulating this need for change and this paradigm shift, there was very little by way of new ideas, by way of innovation, and quite frankly, there was no plan to fix anything. And so it was a package of things previously said, a package of promises previously broken. And I think, as Senator Mahaber said, he's seen it and heard it before. But Madam President, with absolutely nothing groundbreaking and nothing earth-shattering in that budget, what we can see is that the minister sought to continue his administration's narrative, a narrative that this country is growing increasingly tired of. As Senator Khan alluded to, I do have a fair amount of experience in communications, and in particular, political communications. And so it may be easier for me than some to pick up on the government's narrative. And it's the things that they say over and over to convince the population of a particular reality. And from the onset, that narrative has been that this country is bankrupt, and that the sky is falling, and that it is Kamala's fault. And that they would like for all of us to believe that whenever they must implement some measure that the population would not be happy with, you have to blame the previous administration. And the government is engaging in fiscal policies that are unduly overburdening the people of this country, and they have sought to pass the buck for decisions that they have taken. And so there's an article in the British Journal of Psychology that looks to assess this idea of why people seek to blame others. And Senator Rembrandt, in his contribution, also spent quite a lot of time seeking to what I think he thinks is put in perspective for our current situation. But what I see as is that he's forgotten that 2 years has passed, and he's not accounted for what he's done in the 2 years, but he sort of put the blame on our previous administration. And he spoke about the farmers markets, and the farmers markets in Chagwanas and in the Queen's Park Savannah, which I think are great. And I attend farmers markets, and it's one of my favorite things to do on Sundays and on the weekends. But who's going to be at the farmers market this weekend? Because according to the news reports, 85 to 90% of our farmers have been affected by the flooding. And I don't know if the minister did not know that there were floods this weekend, well, this past week, but the farmers probably were waiting for his response today to hear something about what would be done for them, and nothing was forthcoming. But blame is an excellent defense mechanism. So whether you call it projection or denial, displacement, it helps you keep a keen sense of your own self-esteem. And so you avoid confronting your own flaws and failures. It is a tool that they can use when you're in attack mode. So as the country becomes increasingly more aware of the incompetence of this government, they try to find more and new innovative ways to blame the previous administration. And blame it is easier to blame someone than to accept responsibility, because the fact is that you are in charge now, and you do have a responsibility to the people of this country, and the responsibility is not to come here time after time and say what was done between 2010 and 2015, but to say what's being done right now. And there's an unwillingness to face the truth. And so it is easy to see Kamala is at fault, the UNC is at fault, and they are the bad guys. But it's not so easy to say that you don't have a plan for future development, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. Work is easier said than done. It is easier to make excuses, and that is what we've seen for the past 2 years. Excuses. With the Attorney General in the House coming to the House and saying that the opposition is saying, don't cut this and leave this alone. But we've not told him or the government how they should find the money. So here's the thing. This is not some alternate reality. All governments have to balance expenditure. You have to balance spending. Economics is the allocation of scarce resources to satisfy unlimited wants and needs. Individuals do it, businesses do it, and governments do it all the time. So I'm very confused as to why there seems to be this surprise at this rule, that this is what you have to do as a government. No one is questioning falling oil prices, and no one is questioning the fact that you do have a revenue constraint. But what we are questioning are your priorities. What you do have control over is how you spend the money that you do have. And so what we've seen is Ferrygate, fake oil, paintings, soak on the seas, phone bills, hotel bills, golf course maintenance, and the list goes on. So the question becomes, so the nation has a right to question what your priorities are. And so we've been told that we have a false expectation for expenditure, and there's a lot of blame and people of Trinidad and Tobago, I think, in the budget debate have been painted as these vociferous creatures who are clawing at the government on a daily basis for more and more. And I want to in some regard, reject that idea and that painting of the people of this country. It's because the government is still spending money. What the people are saying is that there's a question of management and even one of incompetence, because while you're spending, you're not actually delivering on any of your objectives. So that money is being spent and the people just aren't seeing it. So they have questions and they're upset. So it's not that they're greedy and that there's this idea that they want more, it's that they just want what they were promised. And the philosophy that holds our system together is one of the social contract, and it is a political, well, it's a philosophy that's as old as the study itself. And John Locke's analysis on the social contract, I think, is particularly pertinent here. And it's particularly pertinent on the budget and the government's economic policy in general. In his analysis, he speaks of men uniting into commonwealths. That's the preservation of their wealth, preserving their lives, liberty, and well-being in general. And Locke can easily imagine conditions under which the compact with the government is destroyed, and men are justified in resisting the authority of a civil government. You see, where the government keeps taking, and you as a citizen cannot deduce a single benefit, and you're asked to give more and do more and be better, and while we all have no problem being patriotic and doing our part, we must ask, is the government holding up their end of the bargain? Do we feel safer as citizens? Do we feel economically and financially more secure? Do we have access to quality healthcare? Do we have access to education and opportunities for growth? Do we have better roads? Do we have better drainage? I mean, just again, looking at the flooding over the week, I'm going to say the answer is no. And of all the things that the government is meant to provide on their end of the bargain of the social contract, they've not delivered on a single item. And this is their halfway point. And so I would like to posit that if they had an idea or a clue on how to get us on a path to sustainable development, they would not have kept it a secret for this long. So it's that there's a bankruptcy of ideas and the population, and I think it's important that the population knows that the nation, the country, isn't bankrupt because money is being spent. What you're seeing is a carefully considered communication narrative and a government that's bankrupt of ideas and have nothing of substance to offer this country right now. And so if we just take a look at what was listed under the heading of fiscal reform in the Minister of Finance's presentation, he used what I thought was a particularly interesting choice of words, and the choice of words were repeated here today when Senator West opened the debate. And it was obvious unsustainable weaknesses in the structure of central government's expenditure. Under these unsustainable weaknesses, they spoke about GATE. And in her budget response, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Biswas quoted a World Economic Forum article that spoke about the three responsibilities government has towards its citizens, that of protector, provider, and investor. And this ties back to our present-day understanding of the social contract. And so when we speak of the government as an investor, the World Economic Forum notes that the most important priority of the government as an investor is indeed education, but education cradle to grave. Meaningful opportunities for continuing education must be available to citizens over the course of their lives as jobs change rapidly and acquisition of knowledge accelerates. A government that believes in the talent and potential of its citizens will devote a large portion of its tax revenues to investing in its citizens to help them reach their full potential for an attractive vision. Contrast this sentiment with the idea of unsustainable weaknesses in government expenditure. You see, it is clear that in the absence of an overarching plan for development, that GATE would be seen as an expenditure weakness. Now, I'm not advocating for any wild spending and throwing money at education. I think that there should be careful consideration on how we invest. But I do think it is important to see education as an investment and not as an unsustainable weakness. You see, this boils down to the political philosophy of the party that governs, the party that you put in charge. The United National Congress understands that education is an investment. We understood that for the population to grow and to develop, we have to put our resources in our most valuable resource, our human resources. And so had the government come to the population and said, we have to find a way to reap more benefits from the program, to make it more efficient, to make it more effective, had that approach been taken, then I would have said, yes, perhaps there's some sort of plan. But they did not do that. There was no conversation on how we can restructure the program to align it more to the job market needs, or did we look at emerging markets, emerging job markets, and align our education investment so that it was in line with our developmental needs? See, instead it was seen as as a cost-cutting exercise, right? And what I call slash and burn economics. So you're just cutting things out because you have to save money, so you'll cut it, rather than saying, well, how do I spend what little I have wisely? And you see, it comes from having no definitive or identifiable policy background. When GATE was developed, and I know everybody talks about, GATE was developed when we had more money. And again, so if the question was that we were sustaining a policy item as opposed to just finding ways to stick money in different areas, then we would have had a clear consensus that this is something that was worthy of keeping on the books and in a more productive manner. And so when GATE was developed, it was an evolution from dollar for dollar. And free tertiary education was grounded in the policy that this nation wanted to create a knowledge-based society and wanted to create a globally competitive citizen. And so under this government, there is a paradigm shift. But it's a shift from believing that the citizens of this country are worthy of investment and that we can be globally competitive citizens, and it's taking us backwards. You see, instead of looking for ways to create citizens who can be more productive and therefore grow your society, you've chosen to, spend money on a highway to Toko and a port when you're incapable of managing and maintaining the current infrastructure. So I'm very confused as to that level of prioritization. So you see, we have questions about priorities and how you choose to spend our money, our taxpayers' money. And this idea, I think, of branding people with questions on your tax mechanisms or your cuts as unpatriotic or unwilling to pay their fair share is just in poor taste. We are allowed to have questions. That's just the way our society works. And because citizens, I think, despite the narrative that's being created, are willing to pay their fair share and are willing to contribute if they can see value for money. I think what we're witnessing is a disintegration of the social contract because of misrepresentations on the part of the government, and not that the citizens are these terrible beasts, And so we hear of this whole of government approach where, and we hear the words, but then we don't see the actions or the action items behind this lip service. The allocation for education has increased, as the minister noted. But will we see the value for money in this increase? Are we looking at global trends that are targeting our curriculum to building more productive, more competitive citizens? Are we focusing on science and technology in school, widely regarded as areas with maximum growth potential? And most importantly, as the government pursues this haphazard cost-cutting exercise, are you thinking about the future of this country? You see, when you talk, about that 2010 to 2015 period, Mrs. Prasad-Bissassar spoke about this fourth industrial revolution. And it was the idea is grounded in moving Trinidad and Tobago into a science and technology space that would ensure that our citizens are competitive and not left behind. And so while this current administration keeps floundering around and looking for a clue on how to get us on the path to sustainable development, we had a laptop program that would see more of our students being exposed to science and technology at the and there's something to be said, and there's something to be said about the access to opportunities. You see, children in certain income brackets would have grown up around technology, and that their exposure would have given them a competitive advantage, a consistent leg up. So as they progress, they would always have something of a head start. So as much as people may want to laugh at the laptop programs and consider it to be something that is not worthy of praise, I would like to just posit that perhaps it gave students who would not have had that initial leg up an equitable advantage now, and it brought more people to the table of success. And so these were not handouts or weaknesses in expenditure, but rather a hand up and a way to empower citizens so that it would lead to greater development. See, this was a well thought out process, and we will continue with the process because we understood that technology would take our people and make us more competitive. So we focused on increasing broadband and fiber optic cables throughout the country. And this is the essence of an all-of-government approach. Again, it is not the slash and burn economics that you're seeing. It is not this idea that we cannot move forward because we don't have any money. And what we were seeing is the previous administration was one that wanted to empower citizens, and I'm starting to feel just from their policy prescriptions that this government is insistent on keeping us stagnated and dependent on the government. You see, the government's education policy, in particular tertiary education, is really not a paradigm shift. It has taken us almost 20 years backwards. And so that when we move from education and we look at the labor market and our job policy, and we look at the manifesto that they presented in 2015 when they were seeking this mandate to be in charge, one of the quotes that I thought was particularly important was that they noted that over the years, the labor market has become distorted because of employment of large numbers of persons in government-funded, low-wage, low-productivity jobs such as URP and CPEP. They also noted that there are a number of increasing university graduates who are not finding jobs consistent with their salary expectations. And then they made a series of promises. And then what we actually saw happening once they got into power was retrenchment activity and this idea that persons employed in the government sector are an unsustainable weakness, because that was also listed. The wage bill was listed as an unsustainable weakness. So you went from this idea of that you would create jobs and there'd be jobs for all and there'd be this smart investment to, hey, guys, no, you are a weakness and we just can't sustain you. So, I don't know if the minister will give us the numbers on job creation and what is being done in that area. But what I do know is that there's a disconnect from the things that they see and the things that are actually done. Because while they spoke about job creation, we have a situation in Trinidad right now where a number of doctors had to medically trained practitioners had to resort to an online petition. And the petition said that it serves to seek the assistance in highlighting and addressing the ongoing issue of an increasing unemployment rate among medical practitioners. A significant number of physicians, upon completing their internship program throughout various regions in 2015, were still awaiting responses. And I thought this line was particularly important. It is inconceivable to fathom, despite a clear deficit and underutilization of this mandatory resource, that both our public and private health sector, that over 150 confirmed physicians remain unemployed to this date. Now, this petition was created earlier this year, and these persons are medical doctors and unemployed. And when I was doing CXC and before I proceeded to A-levels, you get advice from all sorts of people, and they told, one of the things was try and do the sciences so you could get a job, to become a doctor, because it's one of the fields that you were almost certain you would be employed, not under this administration. My information is that the solution has been to hire these doctors on 2-month contracts, which in effect is URP for doctors, right? And so, right, so they would want us to trust. So they would want us to trust that there's a plan.
Members, may I remind you, Senator Haynes is making her maiden contribution. The convention and practices that you listen in silence. Okay? Continue, Senator Haynes.
Thank you. And so I don't believe there's a plan for job creation, and I would just like to ask, do you know how many university graduates are unemployed or underemployed? I mean, the Attorney General brought it up in the House, and the Minister of Agriculture brought it up here, and this idea of high levels of absenteeism, and we need to look at our work ethic, and we need to fix all these attitudes, and we have this problem with our attitude. But then I also know, equally high numbers of graduates who have put in lots of hard work, lots of sacrifice, long hours of study, their parents sacrificed to send them to school, because tuition is one thing, but school expenses are more than just tuition. So your parents would have sacrificed. And then all that's available to them are dead-end jobs and things that you cannot make a career out of. So when you talk about the attitude you have to your career, you have to also understand that a lot of people in this country don't have careers. They don't have sustainable jobs. They have something to make money, to make ends meet. And that's not the kind of society that we should want, or that we should want to see right now. And so when you're talking about changing paradigms and cultural shifts and the way that we treat work, and we have to look at the jobs that are available to our people. And I get the sense that there's this bubble so that you can identify the ills. And again, as Senator Mahabir pointed out, there are very, very few solutions. And so if we opened up a job market space that was sensible, that was looking at global trends, and that where we can identify our paths for growth, and that we were identifying ways to empower our citizens, then perhaps the government would be seen as holding up their end of the social contract, and the citizens would be more willing and able to participate as active and empowered members of society. So I would expect that someone will say that you can't expect the government to give you anything, and no one expects that. No one expects that you'd come in and somebody will hand you a job, but we do expect that you would create this space for growth, for sustainable growth, because that is your job. And stop seeing expenditure as a weakness and start making smart investments. And so, every well-educated citizen is just looking for a way to live up to their full potential as creative thinkers, and using their resources wisely to develop the nation. And I would like to believe that if those spaces were created and made available, that they would be utilized. But they aren't there. And instead now we're looking at saying it's the citizens' fault. And so in his budget presentation, the minister spoke about the Business Development Incentive Program. And in it, he had high praises for the European Union model. And so I took my time to just take a look at the EU model and what they had to offer. And you see, when you look at what the EU does for SMEs, is that they have created a space for success. Just a quick look at their website and you'd see that they've listed ways that businesses can access opportunities and meet people within their space, a space for growth. And so you look at it and they talk about how they intend to create business-friendly environments. And then there's a drop-down menu on their Small Business Act for Europe and how they intend to create this business-friendly environment. And then they talk about the promotion of entrepreneurship. And there's an entrepreneurship action plan, something that, I don't know that we have. And how they intend to promote entrepreneurship. And they talk about how they improve access to new markets and internationalization. And then they go down into further detail on how they intend to do this. Because you see, that is the essence of a plan. You present an idea, and then you show how you can go from point A to point B. And that's how you do this thing, if you are serious. And they talk about how you facilitate access to finance, and that goes into further detail. And how they support competitiveness and innovation. And they provide key support networks, including your Europe Business Portal, your Enterprise Europe Network, your SME internationalization support, and a portal and access to finance. And all of these things are readily available. And like I said, what they've done is created an environment for success. And you can see elements of thoughtful planning and implementation so that they built a solid base for success. All of those things are absent here. What we have in the budget, we are emulating reality TV, Shark Tank, and the final stop being a ministerial committee that will dole out $100,000. And so we do have questions about the process, and we do have questions about what is the space you intend to create for this vision that you've presented, because that's important. The details of the plan is important. And so I'm speaking about the plan, and we've heard a lot about diversification, and for the entirety of the time that I've been, from the time I was in school, out of school, we've heard that we need to diversify the economy. So much so that I don't think that most of my peers and colleagues even believe that it's a real thing. And this government has paid minor lip service again in the under the diversification section of the creative industries. And I see that the development of the music industry was given, 1 million, film 2.5 million, and fashion 4.5 million, with a further 500,000 for the business development of the creative industries. And I think what was the most offensive thing about this section is the mama guy. You see, I've had the good fortune of being able to study in New York, Paris, Rome, and Salamanca, Spain. And I've had the opportunity to travel across the United States and in Europe and immerse myself in their creative spaces. And I can say without fear of contradiction that the most creative and innovative people that I know are from right here, from Trinidad and Tobago. The most naturally talented people that I have met. And so when the minister speaks about us being on the verge of becoming export ready, in 2008 I was in Paris, and I walked into a club in Paris and there was soca music playing. This is 2008. In Salamanca, Spain, Marshall Montano was big on the university music scene. So you can walk in as a Trinidadian and they'll recognize our accent because of our artists. And then you had Marshall last year, or this year actually, in Caravan on stage with Drake. So this idea that we need to do something, and we had Bungie Garland on like international video games. And so this idea that we have to do something to make our artists export ready, or that we're creating something from scratch, is an illusion. That's just not the reality. We are export ready. And I'm just not sure what this $1 million is meant to do. Because our artists are ready, our music is ready, and the only people not ready is our government. And so there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the role that they are meant to play here. As usual, there's the unwillingness to trust in our people and to trust in our talents and to see our people as an investment as opposed to this unsustainable weakness. You see, because it's not the philosophy of the People's National Movement to put people first. It's just not how they understand the concept of governance. So I'm not surprised by how they choose to spend the money. I'm just concerned, as are many citizens. And as I move to the end of my contribution, I just would like to end almost where Senator Khan ended, because he said, whereas his tone was boastful as the energy roadmap, I was going through their Vision 2030 document, and on page 26 of this document, it says, the high levels of expenditure incurred over the years begs the question as to why Trinidad and Tobago has not progressed beyond its state of development. It goes further to say that this is perplexing given the wealth the country possessed during the energy boom and in relation to some of the comparator countries. This is a document created by a party who has been in power 39 out of the 55 years since we've been in independence, and as the minister noted, governed through our economic booms. So if you are confused and perplexed as to why we are at this level of development, then what do you leave for the rest of us? Because we certainly would be left confused. You see, we thought you knew. We thought you knew where the money went and why we have so little to show for it. But if you don't know, well, then I certainly don't know. So it goes to show that you can't govern with money and you can't govern without money. So there's an absence of ideas and a frankly destructive underlying political philosophy that this government subscribes to. And then in the last few minutes that I have, I would just like to address, unfortunately, some comments made by the Prime Minister in the House during the debate. And I will not repeat the comments because I have great respect for the space that I'm standing in the people around me in this chamber and those looking on outside. But I will say that people have been clamoring for new politics. Politics marked by mutual respect between policymakers and the people outside, the people of this country. I am from a generation that understands what it means to stand on the shoulders of giants, and that as we move ever closer to shattering glass ceilings, that kind of disrespect and degrading comments has no place here and no place in the new political landscape that we are planning on creating. And so, as our political leader noted, the government is on the Wednesday of its political week. And if you continue as you're going, you can prepare for a very long weekend. And through you, Madam President, I have a message for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Our country is great. Our possibilities are endless. And what you have is a government who has committed to a message of hopelessness. And if you change the government, you'll change the tune. I thank you.
Honourable Senators, permit me to congratulate Senator Haynes on her maiden contribution. Senator Creese.